everybody. We're reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I thought I'd read some more of that today. And the chapter today, the main chapter we want to read, is called The Chocolate Room. And I know my second graders have been really into this book when we started a few weeks ago. So we're working on trying to finish that up. And kids, if you remember, I told you, watch how the characters, not so much Charlie and his grandpa, but the rest of them, the other kids and their parents and stuff, watch how they act and how they react in the story to things that happen, and you'll find examples of how not to behave, okay? So let's get into it, the chocolate room. An important room, this one, cried Mr. Wonka, taking a bunch of keys from his pocket and slipping one into the keyhole of the door. This is the nerve center of the entire factory, the heart of the whole business, and it's so beautiful. I insist upon my rooms being beautiful. I can't abide ugliness in factories. Now, in we go. Oh, do be careful, my dear children. Don't get silly now. Don't get overexcited. Stay calm. Stay very, very calm. Mr. Wonka opened the door. 5 children and 9 grown-ups pushed their way in, and oh, what an amazing sight it was that now met their eyes. They were looking down upon a lovely valley. There were green meadows on either side of the valley, and along the bottom of it there flowed a great brown river. What's more, there was a tremendous waterfall halfway along the river, a steep cliff over which the water curled and rolled in a solid sheet, and then went crashing down into a boiling, churning whirlpool of froth and spray. Below the waterfall, and this was the most astonishing sight of all, a whole mass of enormous glass pipes were dangling down into the river from somewhere high up in the ceiling. They really were enormous, those pipes. There must have been a dozen of them at least, and they were sucking out the brownish, muddy-looking water from the river and carrying it away to goodness knows where. And because they were made of glass, you could see the liquid flowing and bubbling along inside them, and above the noise of the waterfall, you could hear the never-ending sucking sound of the pipes as they did their work. Graceful trees and bushes were growing along the riverbanks, weeping willows and tall clumps of rhododendron bushes with their pink and red and mauve blossoms. In the meadows there were thousands of buttercup flowers. "There, look at that!" cried Mr. Wonka, dancing up and down as he pointed his gold-topped cane at the great brown river. "It's all chocolate. Every drop of that river is hot melted chocolate of the finest quality, the very finest. There's enough chocolate in that river to fill every bathtub in the entire country, and all the swimming pools as well. Isn't it terrific? And just look at all the pipes. They suck up the chocolate and carry it away to all the other rooms in the factory where it is needed. Thousands of gallons of chocolate an hour, my dear children. Thousands and thousands of gallons." The children and their parents were too flabbergasted to speak. They were staggered. They were dumbfounded. They were bewildered and dazzled. They were completely bowled over by the hugeness of the whole thing. They simply stood and stared. "The waterfall is the most important thing of all," Mr. Wonka went on. "It mixes the chocolate, you know. It turns it up. It pounds it and beats it. It makes it light and frothy. No other factory in the world mixes its chocolate by waterfall. But it's the only way to do it properly. The only way. Oh, and do you like my trees?" he cried, pointing with his stick. "And these lovely bushes, don't you think they look pretty? I told you I hated ugliness. Of course, they are all eatable." "Oh, yes, that's right. Everything's made of something different and delicious. Do you like the meadows? Do you like the grass and the buttercups? The grass you're standing on, my dear little ones, is made of a new kind of soft, minty sugar that I've just invented. I call it swudge. Try a blade, please do. It's delectable." Automatically, everybody bent down and picked one blade of grass. Everybody, that is, except Augustus Gloop, who took a big handful. And Violet Beauregard, before tasting her blade of grass, took a piece of world record-breaking chewing gum out of her mouth and stuck it carefully behind her ear. By the way, never put your gum behind your ear. That will lead to bad things. Now, "Isn't it wonderful?" whispered Charlie. "Hasn't it got a wonderful taste, Grandpa?" "Oh, Charlie, I could eat the whole field of grass," said Grandpa Joe, grinning with delight. "I could go around on all fours like a cow and eat every single blade of grass in this field." "Try one of the buttercups," cried Mr. Wonka. "They're even better." Suddenly, the air was filled with screams of excitement. The screams came from Veruca Salt. She was pointing frantically to the other side of the river. Look! Look over there! She screamed. What is it? He's moving. He's walking. It's a little person. It's a little man down there below the waterfall. Everybody stopped picking buttercups and stared across the river. She's right, Grandpa, cried Charlie. It is a little man. Do you see him? I see him, Charlie, said Grandpa Joe in disbelief. And now everybody starts shouting at once. There's two of them. Oh, my goodness, so there is. Wait, there's more than two. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5. But what are they doing? Where do they come from? Who are they? Children and parents alike rushed down to the edge of the river to get a closer look. Why, they're so little. They're no higher than my knee. Strange little men they were, no larger than medium-sized dolls. They had now stopped what they were doing, and now they were staring back across the river at the visitors. One of them pointed towards the children, and then he whispered something to the other 4, and all 5 of them burst into laughter. But they can't be real people, can they? Asked Charlie. Of course they're real people, Mr. Wonka answered. They are Oompa-Loompas. Chapter 16, the Oompa-Loompas. Oompa-Loompas, everyone said at once. Oompa-Loompas? Imported direct from Loompa-land, said Mr. Wonka proudly. There's no such place, said Mrs. Salt. Oh, excuse me, dear lady, but I have to say you're wrong. Mr. Wonka, cried Mrs. Salt. I am a teacher of geography. Oh, then you know all about it, said Mr. Wonka. Oh, what a terrible country it is. Nothing but thick jungles infested by the most dangerous beasts in the entire world. Hornswogglers and snozwangers and those terribly wicked wangdoodles. A wangdoodle would eat 10 Oompa-Loompas for breakfast and come galloping back for a second helping. When I went out there, I found the little Oompa-Loompas living in tree houses. They had to live in tree houses to escape from the wangdoodles, the hornswogglers, and the snozwangers. They were practically starving to death. They were living on green caterpillars, and the caterpillars tasted revolting. And the Oompa-Loompas spent every moment of their days climbing through the treetops, looking for other things to mash up with the caterpillars to make them taste better. Red beetles, for instance, and eucalyptus leaves, and the bark of the bong-bong tree. All of them were nasty in their own right, as far as taste, but not quite so nasty as the caterpillars. Poor little Oompa-Loompas. The one food that they longed for more than any other was the cocoa bean. But they couldn't get it. And Oompa-Loompa was lucky if he found 3 or 4 cocoa beans a year, but oh, how they craved them. They used to dream about cocoa beans all night and talk about them all day. You had only to mention the word cocoa to an Oompa-Loompa, and he would start dribbling at the mouth. The cocoa bean, Mr. Wonka continued, which grows on the cocoa tree, happens to be the thing from which all chocolate is made. You cannot make chocolate without the cocoa bean. The cocoa bean is chocolate. I myself use billions of chocolate beans every week in this factory. And so, my dear children, as soon as I discovered that the Oompa-Loompas were crazy for this particular food, I climbed up to their treehouse village, poked my head in through the door of the treehouse belonging to the leader of the tribe. The poor little fellow, looking thin and starved, was sitting there trying to eat a bowl full of mashed-up green caterpillars without getting sick. Look here, I said, speaking not in English, of course, but in Oompa-Loompish. Look here, if you and all your people will come back to my country and live in my factory to work, you can have all the cocoa beans you want. I've got mountains of them in my storehouses. You can have cocoa beans for every meal. You can gorge yourself silly on them if you want to. I'll even pay your wages in cocoa beans if you wish. You really mean it? Asked the Oompa-Loompa leader, leaping up from his chair. Of course I mean it, said Wonka. And you can have chocolate as well. You know, chocolate tastes better than the cocoa bean because it's got milk and sugar added. The little man gave a whoop of joy and threw his bowl of mashed caterpillars right out the treehouse window. It's a deal, Mr. Wonka, he cried. Come on, let's go. So I shipped them all over here, every man, woman, and child in the Oompa-Loompa tribe. It was easy. I smuggled them over in large packing cases with holes in them, and they all got here safely. They're wonderful workers. They all speak English now, and they love music. They're always making up songs. I expect you'll hear a good deal of singing today from time to time. I must warn you, though, that they are rather mischievous and like to get in trouble. They like jokes. They still wear the same kind of clothes that they wore in the jungle. They insist upon that. Now, as I was saying, let's continue on. Daddy, shouted Veruca Salt. You'll remember she's the girl who always gets everything she wants. Daddy, I want an Oompa-Loompa. I want you to get me an Oompa-Loompa. I want an Oompa-Loompa right away. I want to take it home with me. Go on now, Daddy. Get me an Oompa-Loompa. Ooh, do you hear that bad attitude? Now, my pet, her father said to her. We mustn't interrupt Mr. Wonka. But I want an Oompa-Loompa now, screamed Veruca. All right, Veruca, all right. But I can't get it for you this second. Please be patient, darling. I'll see you have one before the day is out. Augustus, shouted Mrs. Gloop. Augustus, sweetheart, I know you love to eat and you love chocolate, but I don't think you had better do that. Augustus Gloop, as you might have guessed, had quietly sneaked down to the edge of the river, the chocolate river, and he was now kneeling on the riverbank, scooping hot melted chocolate into his mouth just as fast as he could. And that's where we're going to end it. We'll pick up on our next chapter with Augustus Gloop gets into trouble. One quick thing I want to mention to you, kids. Remember, Sunday's Mother's Day. Make something for Mom. Write her a letter, make her a little craft, some kind of a little project. But whatever you do for her, make sure Mom knows this weekend just how much you love her and appreciate her. I love all of you and appreciate all that you've been doing. Stay strong, second grade. Just about done with the school year, all right? Love you guys. Have a good weekend.